Right, a tweet sent yesterday by President William Ruto, and I'll read it. It's on your screen. My friend Raila I'm off to Tanzania for a human capital meeting to harmonize the expansion of employment opportunities in our continent. Now, that's not my interest tonight. My interest is the second part of this tweet. I am back tomorrow evening. As you have always known, I'm available to meet one-on-one with you anytime at your convenience. Signed, WSR. I mean, the only time you see WSR on a tweet is when the president himself signs it off. So whenever you look at the president's account and it's not WSR signed down there, know that that's not a tweet from the president, but probably from his team. Gentlemen, thank you so much for coming. Asante sana, Honorable Mbui, thank you so much for coming. Honorable Sosion, asante sana for coming. Dr. Nikala, asante sana. Honorable Kagushia, thank you, gentlemen, for coming. I think Sosion missed the first part. I'd like to give you this opportunity, but I'll not talk about Uhuru Kenyatta and saying that he can go to State House. I want to ask you a direct question. Do you think the Azimio side is looking for a handshake with President William Ruto?
You're definitely looking for a handshake. If you hear, going by what we watched yesterday from Right Honorable Raila Odinga, that Samia Suluhu was in the country, when you get to a point where there is a strange external mediator in the country, it is no longer about the issues that were raised in the cost of living. It is not about the cost of living during the demonstration. It is not about the opening of the server. It is not about the IBC. Then absolutely it is about the handshake. The agenda that has been existing around, which is not talked about and which is the main agenda, is power sharing. And you look at what happened in 2007, it eventually culminated in power sharing. You look at what happened in 2018, that actually was, it ended up in creating what you call a handshake regime. People can dispute about it. But
so you're using history to justify.
Yeah, and based on these particular happenings, this is a master strategy to try and force another kind of government, which I don't think is right for our democracy. And that means what people do, the decision, the supreme and the sovereign decision of the people in any elections will always be thrown under the bus, and we organize another setup of arrangement of government, which I don't think is a good thing. We need...
Where do you get this, Honorable Sosion? Because they have clearly said they don't need a handshake. They don't need a handshake. They've said it. Why can't you take their word to the bank?
That is not exactly what we see. You see, we deduce from simple logic. So, you don't
You're using the past. It's not logic. You're using history. This is not logic.
It's logic. History. It's logic. It's history and logic also. Yes. What we see, the moment you see an extra mediation around the corner, and we are told Samia Suluhu was here, I don't think, if it is without the handshake, the issues on the table does not require any external mediation. So I think it's good to be factual and say, yes, here there is a push
for handshake.
For a handshake.
Dr. Nikal.
And that is why the activities that have gone on, even around the demonstrations, have bordered on extra sabotage of the government not to function, so that the government can submit to a model of a handshake and that of power sharing.
Dr. Nikal,
to me, I don't think it's right.
The president has said that the only thing he can talk about is how to take Kenya forward. Are you looking for a handshake? Is Azimio looking for a handshake in this dialogue? Because there's a very loud push for dialogue right now. The international community, the religious leaders, the civil societies, individuals, even members of parliament, leadership in this country, everyone talks of they should sit and talk. Are you looking for a handshake, or you're looking at a way that Kenya can function and everyone moves ahead?
We are not looking for a handshake. What really I find very interesting is the way people argue that if you are looking for a dialogue, you must be looking for a handshake. Who says we cannot dialogue about taxes? Who says we can say, let's take for example the finance bill. Who says we cannot dialogue about the finance bill? There are things we didn't like about it. If now we start talking about it and then we can start saying, okay, it is there, let's let's say the court says it goes on, because if the court stops it, then a situation has been created that will probably take us to where we want. Then we will talk about it in Parliament at least, if the court says no. But say the court doesn't say no, and we still think it is not good, then we can say, okay, we can talk about it. We can say, you want 16%. We will think 16% is too high. You are insisting on the housing levy. We think at this time the country situation is not. Who says you cannot dialogue about the realities of life? Who says we can only dialogue about power?
History.
This
history tells us that when push comes to shove, the government of the day always invites the opposition to the table, and this is what the compromise that is made. So history says.
First of all, even if you want to use history, we are using two things that they're saying here, which are totally not the same. When you talk of the coalition government, which came out of also international negotiations, there were actually documents that were signed and said, you have this part, you have this part. Now, the other one they are comparing with, there were no structural arrangements, there were no legal arrangements.
2017.
2017. There were no legal arrangements. All they were seeing are two people who are always together, and they were assuming there was power sharing. If you now ask, and if you are people of governance, because the problem sometimes we have as politicians, we can't move away from politics and get to governance. I mean, you are a lawyer, I presume, or if you're not. If you talk about politics and governance, and you say you have reached an agreement in real governance, that agreement must be in structures of governance. So you will say, if we have a handshake, it means this is your portion, or this is how you run the government. These are the things you will handle. Now, the second one, they say the 2017, there was no such thing. Let me tell you, Tom, and I want to give you another definition of government. When we were on strike in 1981, and everybody kept saying, we went to Kenyatta, we were doctors, and the director of Kenyatta was saying, the government does not like that. Then we went to the director of medical service, Kwanza, the government does not like that. Then we went to the PS, the government. Then we went to Magugu, the government. Then we went to the Oskandia, he said the government. So one of us asked,
who is this government?
Who is this person you call the government?
Yes.
Then he said, it is the president and the people he listens to. So people can be friends in the street, and they have a lot of influence. Some of us here have been in parliament. You have even seen bills coming into parliament that if you look at it, this bill couldn't possibly have come from the government as we know it. So you can't compare where there's a structure and where nebulous situation, and you say that is exactly the same as this.
Okay.
No, so because we talk about politics and perceptions and feelings and leave it at that, and we don't take it down to what is important for the people.
Okay.
What is important for the people's government. And let me just say, perceptions and feelings in politics is good for getting votes and getting to power. They don't work in governance.
When the rubber hits the road.
No, they don't.
Let me ask you, Mheshimiwa.
So the answer is we are not looking for
a handshake.
handshake.
Your leader, Raila Odinga, has not declined expressly about talking to President William Ruto or honoring that invite. By the way, Kagwisha feels it was all... Anyway, he will say about that. But it was... So the question is, Raila Odinga never declined to come for this dialogue. The only thing he said, mistrust. Eliminate this mistrust. Raila Odinga goes for that meeting with William Ruto.
You know, Ken, first and foremost, I think we need to be very clear about what exactly is a handshake. And I think the definition of handshake in this country has found to be like it is a monster, some kind of demon, and almost satanic. But the reality is this, that a handshake is basically simply an agreement. And I will tell you this, that yes, we would like an agreement. But what do we want as an agreement? first and foremost, please realize we do not want share of this government. Kenya Kwanza government, we want no part of it. But what we want is that the rights of our people are respected. And there are certain things that are obvious. The cost of living has been very high. We have stated, and every time we speak, we say this, that the cost of living must be brought down. And this regime came into power and has completely refused to listen to the voices of Kenyans. And then, to make matters worse, you pass a finance bill, which is now an act of parliament, which actually is going to make life harder for all of our people. Disposable income will go down, and the cost of every product will go up based on those whatever tax regime. So we want an agreement, a handshake, to repeal the finance bill. We want a handshake, Ken, to ensure that the issue of IEBC, as it is constituted, is not done in a way that it favors one side of the political divide, because IEBC must be neutral. So we do want an agreement, a handshake, to ensure that IEBC is sorted out. We also want a handshake to ensure that there is party discipline in this country. When we came from the last election, Azimio la Umoja had more members in the National Assembly than the Kenya Kwanza regime. But they went ahead and raided our members, bought our members like chicken.
But whose problem is that if your members decided to cross over? It's not their problem.
Let me tell you, it is a political problem. It is against the Political Parties Act. But you see, the problem that we have in this country is we have an executive that is rogue, that is trying to control everything. I'm telling you, the reality is that if the administration respected the opposition, and remember when they came to power, they said, we want a strong opposition. And the first thing they do is buy every member that can be bought.
I don't think that is their problem.
It is a problem. It is a problem of,
if your members
it is a
agree
fight
to be
against,
bought.
you know, Ken, it's a fight against democracy. We must be.
But if your members elected on a ticket,
Yes.
if I decided today to walk out of this place because a media house has given me more money, how is that their problem?
But Ken, let me tell you, one of the things that the president swore when he was taking over that seat was that he would defend the constitution and uphold the rule of law. He's gone against the law by buying members from the opposition and making them his members. And unfortunately, what it means is that, and then you've seen even interference with the political party Jubilee that was headed by the former president. I mean, that's what we are saying. We want an agreement that this regime starts respecting the rule of law. You've seen even situations like recently, you know, when the court say that, you know, stop implementation of the finance bill, they quickly rush and implement the 16% VAT on fuel. So we want an agreement that they will respect also the courts.
Nothing to do with the leadership.
No, we do
Nothing
not
to do with the leadership. We'll hold you to account. But let me bring Kagusha now. Read these people's mind. Read these people.
By the way, let me just ask you a question.
Yes.
This gentleman says that the president is buying members of parliament. You know, when I said someone is sponsoring maandamano, you became very hard on me, asking me to substantiate. Why are you not asking me?
I told him it's not his problem. I told him it's not the problem of the president. I agree.
Would you like me to substantiate? Because I can.
It will be very interesting.
In a minute.
Substantiate.
Let me ask you. Members were elected, and when they were elected by the people within certain political parties. When they came to the house, they crossed they crossed the aisle. You know the law and what it provides because you're a lawyer. They didn't follow the law. Now, why I'm saying they're bought is because why is it that someone who comes from my region, for example, who knows that the constituents are very unhappy with the bill that is being forced through our parliament by the executive, and he still goes ahead and supports it?
I think
that for me,
let me give you a practical example.
I think he's not substantiating anything.
Let me try to
substantiate.
It's my time.
It's your time.
It's my time.
Gentlemen, I'm going to give you time. But that question was very important.
But you know, the issue of substantiating is the issue of he found someone paying the president or his
giving someone money.
Allies, paying someone to cross the floor. You see, you can't assume that members of a certain constituency that you don't represent are not in support of government. By the way, you'll be very surprised as to how much a lot of people do support William Samoei Ruto, even out of his interactions with them. You know that the president has actually been going to interact with the wananchi, and he is explaining his points directly to the people, and they are understanding what he's saying. But the issue really was about the issue of the handshake. And
can you try and let Daktari give us an example, substantiate this?
I think he can do it after I have given my point.
Go ahead.
Yeah,
go ahead.
You know, the issue of the handshake.
Yes.
You know why we think the handshake, or rather the negotiations and the dialogue that is being called upon is choreographed, is a narrative, is just a perception, just as like my brother did say here, Daktari, that we find ourselves trapped into politics sometimes when we are supposed to also be looking at the issue of governance.
Yes.
And I want to thank William Samoei Ruto, because for him, he has decided to concentrate on governance. And if you look at his moves every day, he has left the noise and the politics to every other politician. But for him, he's busy working. You will see him in coast this week, 5 days, doing things and launching this, launching that, making policies on this and guiding here and guiding there. And really, he is on the ground doing what he's been elected to do.
When he answers the opposition in the podium, you say it's not politics? Because he's been answering the opposition on the podium. Let's be honest.
A lot of times he's even advising them. He's telling them on how to
so it's not only about governance.
But the issue is, why we think that this is all about the power sharing and not about the common mwananchi. Number one, you are saying that you want to have dialogue and a sitting with His Excellency the President. But the subject matter here is the Finance Bill or the Finance Act. The Finance Act, all of us are aware that it is in court. It's already now under the third arm of government, and it's being canvassed there. And you see, you can now have a sitting to discuss something that is in court. That would be sub judice, you see. So where is the honesty in this? And I call it hypocrisy. Number two, Raila Odinga, in one of the meetings that was held in Jakarta, was captured by the media and by everyone advising Kenyans on what steps they are supposed to take to ensure that they deny the Kenya Kwanza government finances and revenue so that the government collapses. Are you getting? And you call that calling for dialogue for cost of living? How then do you advise people that let's do things to collapse the government? It's also on record in the last several months that the ODM side, and for the respect of the Wiper member who is here, you call it Azimio, the remaining few Azimio members, they say that they are going to organize a grand march to State House to remove the illegitimate government. In fact, in almost all the references of the Azimio side to the Kenya Kwanza government, they call it the illegitimate government. It's only this week when we have now heard them saying the president. Now, that is one of the, or those are some of the reasons why we feel that these gentlemen have nothing much to do with the issue of governance, have nothing much to do with the issue of cost of living. Their thinking is a little bit more embedded on the issue of power sharing. Okay. And sometimes even not power sharing, some of them, like I know one of them, one of the handshake brothers, would actually be looking at the issue of protection in terms of business, you know. And of course we have said he will get protection, but that must be done in accordance with the law, not anywhere at the expense of Kenyans, other Kenyans. So you don't believe them? And of course, the issue of history is also very important in this. I want you to remember the kind of hula balloons we had in this country in 1997 until Tinga was invited in Kano. And that time we say that Jogo swallowed the Tinga. And of course, you know what happened after that? The gentleman was made to be the SG of Kano, and then he was given a docket in the ministry, a cabinet docket. And again, we find ourselves again in 2007, fights all over the country. Which cabinet docket was this? In 1997. 1997, Raila Odinga was given he was given a flag. Was invited as a member of cabinet for local government. In fact, another member had to actually step down for him. Then we come again to 2007, fights all over the country, and again, Raila Odinga again is invited in government and now assumes the role of a prime minister. And again, we come 2017, you saw again what happened, so and another handshake. So there's a very good basis of history that also informs what now could also be happening. And what now Kenya Kwanza government has said, because I will not want to say this is William Samoei Ruto who have said this. It's all of us who have said we cannot continue rewarding those kind of actions. We cannot continue rewarding that kind of approach, because the more we reward bad behavior, the more we enforce bad behavior.
Okay. So it's not happening. In a nutshell, it's not happening.
So, whatever dialogue, whatever discussion, one must come to the table with the understanding that it will not result into handshake whatsoever.
Let me go to Daktari, then I come back to Sosion. What was your point?
Substantiate.
Yes.
I will not mention names because it's difficult, but I actually talked to a gentleman, one of the people who left, and this is what he told me. It's the truth. But I won't say who it is. If I were to ask him and he would say yes, I would mention the name. He said, look, we had just finished elections. Daktari, I was poor. William Ruto calls me himself and tells me you are going to get 5 million shillings. Could I refuse it? I was told that in the house. So these things are reality. Now,
but Daktari, let me ask you, what was the criteria, just briefly, what was the criteria for this allegation, if true, for President William Ruto using to pick people? Were you called personally?
No, I wasn't called.
So what was the criteria that we see the kind of people who left? What is the criteria that he used to say, this one is a weakling, I can call? What was the criteria in your mind?
Who should you ask that question?
No, I'm asking in your mind.
Yeah, you have answered it. And now, if you ask a girl, the girl is agreeing who should seduce her. Are you asking the people who are seducing the criteria or the people who have been seduced?
My point is this. If that approach was to happen, that the president needed to take people, he would have come for everyone and then a few people would refuse.
No, what we don't know is how many. There's only two things I know.
Yeah.
One, he didn't call me.
He didn't call,
That I know.
And
how many people he called, I don't know.
Okay.
But I know there is one he called. Who told
you? Okay.
Yes. So now the rest is not. So I can assume he must have called many. Some agreed, some did not agree. But that one person convinced me that actually people were called.
Okay.
Now, then there was something about negotiating something that is in court. Matters in court can be negotiated outside court and then go and be prosecuted in court. Who says something in court cannot be negotiated? There are many times that even the court itself says if the two parties can agree,
register consent.
Absolutely. So this preoccupation, which I call pathological obsession with us seeking power and blocking our colleagues from seeing the reality for which we are suffering Kenyans, I mean, it should really stop. And the best thing to do is then do those things we are asking, but don't give this power and see if we say, why don't we use the scientific, possible, practical things? Okay, those things you want, we will do them, but you are not getting anything in power. And let's see if we continue. Why don't we use the simpler way?
They're saying that is, Sosion says that was a way to put pressure on the president to accede to the demand, and finally you come to the table because you're frustrating, denying them the revenue, and it's a tactic. Then eventually you come for it.
What I'm saying, if me, I suspect, I don't know, maybe in the real physical world we live. Some of us in our professions, you live in the real world. You lie about the drug you have given somebody, the guy dies. If you are an engineer, you lie that you put this filter.
And you didn't.
But let me tell you, that also applies even in politics. When you are finished with the perception, we must go down in the real life.
Okay.
So
eventually,
all you would do is then say, okay, let's talk to these people.
Okay.
This is what they want. This is what they want. Give them that, and now see if they're still insisting on this demonstration. Then you say, now tell us what you want.
What you really want.
Now it is power.
I'm coming to Sosion, but just make it brief. Then I go to
sure, but really on that pathological obsession with really, I am telling you, that is in fact a very proper and good description of what ODM is all about. They are pathologically...
Is it ODM or Azimio?
No, it's ODM. They are pathologically obsessed.
I don't see Kalonzo Musyoka in ODM. I don't see Martha Karua in ODM. Why do you ignore the other leaders?
Sorry, for the sake of my brother here.
I always like when you come to the table, we become honest. Mheshimiwa Kalonzo is not on ODM.
But you know, Ken, really, you can't call for honesty here when a honorable member is lying on say and you're not calling
About
him
which
honest.
lie? What is
He
the
has
lie?
lied.
What is
He
the
has
lie?
lied.
What
He
is
has
the lie?
lied. He
Yes.
has lied.
What is the
He
lie?
has lied
Yes.
that a member of parliament, a respected honorable member of parliament,
Yes.
was called by William Ruto to collect some money, and you know that's a lie, by the way.
How do I know it's a lie?
No,
It is a
but
lie.
how
How do I
would
know
you-
it's a
you
lie?
should- You should
Now,
press
Ken,
him.
Because he did not mention the name.
but
If
of
he
course,
mentioned
but
the
why is
name,
he
I
not
will call
mentioning
that
the name?
member of
Why is he not
parliament
mentioning the
and
name?
ask that member of
Because I can
parliament.
tell you,
He's
he's
lying.
just using that as a lie.
No,
just
no,
to try. But let me ask you now. Let
Yes,
me ask.
please.
Do you think?
What
Do
I'll
you
do
think?
later
Do you think?
is
Do you
actually
think?
I'll
do you
actually
think-
go and
He's
talk to him
watching.
with the member.
He's watching.
Do you think?
Probably
do
he'll
you
tell you
think?
to
Do you
mention.
think this negotiation and mediation that Suluhu was apparently supposed to be mediating was supposed to be about finance bill? Was she going to be mediating about the cost of living in Kenya?
Okay.
Are you getting? Let's be honest. There's so much hypocrisy with these guys,
This
and they
team.
know so well
Okay.
that
Now,
what they are looking
100%
for is getting
is
into
power.
government
Ken,
and power.
100%, yes.
The right word has been flagged out here. And when you hear people using certain words,
Yes.
then they practice those things they talk about. Lies. I think here.
Let me tell you. No.
Allow me.
Allow him.
Let me tell you. Let me tell you. Let me tell you. No. Let me tell you. Sosion,
Allow me.
Honorable
Allow me
Sosion.
to finish.
No,
I've been given-
Honorable
And-
Sosion.
unless you mention that member, we can't believe
you know
you are-
what you are doing.
Ken.
You are asking the impossible
Yeah.
to then.
Then don't mention it.
Yeah.
Honorable Sosena has
Ken,
not even finished his point.
Ken, it's my turn. I've not even started, and you are
You
jumping.
cannot say a lie because
Because
you
the
say this-
security are always
I know.
afraid.
No,
Security
I
are always
know.
afraid.
I was
Now,
told
so
this.
Ken,
You can stand by
I
your
can
word.
stand
so
on
Ken,
that.
Okay.
so Ken.
I can actually die with it.
Well,
member lies to you.
when you see an external
Okay, now he's
mediator,
bringing another one that the
when
member
you see
lied
an
to me.
external mediator, when you see an external
Hold up,
mediator,
yes.
I think it's good to become orderly in the show.
Yeah.
So that when it's stand talking, stand talking. When you see an external mediator, the agenda is not what is being talked about. The agenda is not the cost of living, because the cost of living did not start after the general election. It was already high. It skyrocketed during the handshake regime, and they kept quiet. And if you get the clips of what they talked about during the handshake regime, it's different. It's a paradox. So it's not about the cost of living. It's not about IEBC. Matters of IEBC have been closed. Elections determined. It's not about the server. And when we talk about this thing called party discipline, and we are trying to debate about the rights, constitutional rights of members of parliament, Article 38. If members of parliament shift alliance in the house, it's a right. That one cannot be.
Is it also
sorted
an
out
obligation
politically.
that you rescind your... Wait, is it also your corresponding obligation as a member of parliament who has made a right under Article 38, which, by the way, is not only for members of parliament, is it also an obligation on your part to drop out of that seat and seek a fresh mandate?
No,
is
no,
it
no,
a
no.
corresponding,
On the other side,
is it a
terms of-
corresponding obligation?
In terms of
Mheshimiwa?
voting and activity and in the National Assembly, it is not a must that you toe the party line. It's not a must. You vote on your conscience, vote the way the constituents want you, and you cannot seek for
that is not-
dialogue.
that is
you
not my
cannot
point.
seek for dialogue with the executive to try and reconfigure relationships and how to work at the National Assembly. That is not right.
You are a trade
Respecting
unionist. No.
court
I
orders,
I have to get you back there. As
Yes.
soon as you explain, I'll let you go. There is a corresponding obligation. We have seen it, and you've talked about history in this country. And one of the people who did that is Raila Odinga. Why can't you, when you say that now you're supporting the activities of a different political party, supporting the party leadership, why don't you, as a corresponding obligation, Mheshimiwa Sosion, just say, because I have decided to cross the floor, I will cross it fully. I will resign from my seat, seek a fresh mandate on this party so that I support it fully. Is it not
Let
that
me
corresponding
let me
that
answer
has
you.
not
Let me
obligation?
answer
That
you.
has
Ken.
not happened,
Let
by
me
the
answer
way.
you,
Yes,
Ken. Because
please. Yes.
It's my turn.
Yes.
Let me answer you. The members of parliament are working with the president, not the political party. It's the president for the good of the people. The moment a president is elected, is the president of the Republic
Exactly.
of Kenya.
I
And
agree with
when
you.
members of parliament elect to engage the president as the head of the executive, that does not undermine even their loyalty to the parties. And the president has been said, when the handshake happened in 2018, was it approved by political parties? It wasn't. And we saw the opposition getting cozy with government and working with the president. That has been said. It's a right. The right of association cannot be taken away. And you cannot,
If it becomes
you
the
cannot
part of
convert
policy.
members of parliament to be slaves of individuals rather than institutions. And
Let me ask you,
and
Honorable
even
Sossion, just
voting-
one more
even
question.
voting in the
Just one
National
more
Assembly.
question. Just one more question, then we can go to that. Honorable, what is her name? The lady from Nyeri. When the president, the deputy president, Wamushomba, visited her constituency, soon after she declared that she was against the finance bill, right? Soon, she was never even allowed next to the podium. I'll ask you today as Honorable, she wasn't allowed. Honorable Kagusha, if today you stood in Parliament and supported the ideology of Azimio in Parliament, do you think the president would still favor you?
No, the truth of the
Just
matter
a
is,
short answer, because I need to go back to
Yeah, but the truth of the
Yes.
matter is,
Yes.
Mijungu, to be very truthful and factual, there is no member of parliament who have, for example, supported from ODM side, who have supported the activities of UDA in any way, or any other political party. None of them.
Why they are
All
undisciplinary? Why
that
they
is-
are
voted on
undisciplinary?
bills.
all
in
what
Parliament.
has happened is that they visited His Excellency the President in State House, which anyway any other person does. Even the principal, I mean, even Raila Odinga himself, as you have seen the president telling him, you can come to State House anytime you want.
Yeah, it's
Are you
right.
getting? I mean, anyone can go to State House. So displaying party members because they went to State House, really, you know, even it's
You are simplifying. You know what?
No, but
Mheshimiwa,
that's
you're
the truth.
simplifying.
That's the truth.
We have seen them work. I have seen them in several offices. Interior, I've seen them
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
I have seen them in the functions by the president.
member
I
does
have
that.
seen all that
Every
happening.
member does that.
And they have declared. There's some who have declared the president
will
will
work-
work with
even
you.
when even when the president goes to
How are you
Ukambani,
saying it's just a visit to
no,
State
no, no,
House?
I'm telling you,
Yes.
even when the president goes to state, I mean to his constituency,
Yes, he will
or
be
even
there.
his county, he will be there. Are you
Yes.
getting?
He's been in
Yeah. So
Machakos, I've
association
never
with the
been
president should not attract
choose
any party
to be there or
disciplinary measures at all. Then the other political parties that you have seen disassociating themselves with Azimio, they are doing it legally. I mean, like now, you can see the members of Jubilee, they are in the process of decamping from their first and original contract with Azimio. And they want to be free so that they can be able now to associate legally.
Yeah.
And this is being done legally. There's really no member of ODM, for example, who have decamped from ODM to either UDA or associated themselves with
They've
UDA
declared support.
or with Kenya Kwanza.
They've declared
All
support.
they have done is to go and lobby for maendeleo from the government in
Okay,
State
can-
House.
can-
Which
can-
is
can-
somewhere
I
in
think
square.
Honorable
Ken-
Mbui has been
Ken-
silent for a while.
Yeah, thank
He's
you,
been
Ken.
silent
You know
for a while.
what?
I'm coming to you, Honorable
I've just
Sossion.
noticed that my friend from Ukurueni, he keeps jumping in even when he's not invited. And it's fair that we have a discussion so all of us get a chance. You know, it is the law. The Political Parties Act is very clear that if you start advancing the ideals of another political party other than the one that sponsored you to Parliament, then you are deemed to have defected and resigned, and you should leave office and then seek fresh mandate. It is in the law. So this issue of saying that you can work with the president, you can support another party, it is against the law. So that's what we are saying, that these members should have defected. But anyway, let me just say this, that I've listened to this story about the talks, and every time Kenya Kwanza people talk about these talks between Azimio, and they're very convinced that it is going to be something about share of government. Now, you know what? Why don't you call our bluff? Why don't you call our bluff? Because it is not the president now who is saying no. It is all these hawks around him that are saying no. They want a share of government. Why can't they meet and then you tell us that Raila has said he wants to be now the prime minister?
The president
Why don't they
himself
meet?
has said he
That
won't
has
share
been
power.
done.
Yes,
Even
the president has said he's not share power.
Ken, that
but
has
we
been
have
done.
said,
We have bipartisan
I have
team.
explained very
We
clearly
have bipartisan
what our
team.
conditions are. I sit in that leadership of that coalition, and I've explained to you the conditions and what we want. We want nothing to do with a share of this government.
Okay.
After all, in 2027, we are sending this government home. Why would we want to be part of a failing government? This government has let Kenya
Can I come
down.
in now?
We don't want to sink with you.
Yes,
Can I
coming
come
in
in?
really quick because I need to go back to Sossion. He didn't finish
Let
his
me
point.
say,
Yes.
simple, the freedom of association. And that freedom of association means then you belong to some group. And that group has the way it does its things. And now the lawyers will now put it into law and write those things. Even when law was not there, people knew that if you belong to this group, you did like this group did. Now we put it in law, and he has explained to you that if you are seen to support their deals, you support their activities, then you are deemed. So that is the law.
By law,
now,
yeah.
if now, even on Kenya Kwanza side, you agree that on this matter, even in parliament, there are certain issues, then you can say, okay, people will vote as they want. But as a group, you go and discuss and say, on this matter, we'll vote like this. If you vote differently, are you still subscribing to the ideals and to the agreement within that party?
Let me ask you, I'm not in parliament.
So now,
does a parliamentary group usually give way forward to the membership regarding
in
something
some
that comes
issues,
or
in some
your own?
in some issues,
Yes,
in
they
some
get
issues,
direction. Okay.
in some issues we'll get.
Like
But
the
if you
finance.
like the finance, but if you constantly don't agree with those, can you be deemed to be in that party?
Okay.
And let me just say the finance bill.
Yeah.
Even then, the way you do it, let's be realistic about life. Even the way you want to do it, you know that our side or our party or our coalition actually wish to do it this way. People sat and say you are going to do it this way, and when you get to the floor of the house or in a public meeting, you say things that are obviously against it, in a way even arrogantly against it. Are you still with them?
Can I ask you, Honorable Nyikal?
Yes, ask me.
Why is it that Kenya Kwanza is not de-whipping Wamushomba,
Thank you very much.
telling her to leave?
Thank you very
Same
much.
thing your party
That's
is
a point.
doing.
That's a point.
Now,
That's a point. And that's a hypocrisy.
what I'm saying, it is too early to say whether they'll not do it. And sometimes, no. And sometimes you actually don't know whether that itself is a strategy to let you ask exactly that question. So if you have one person, you can say, "What are you
quiet.
That's what I say." But if there are many of
I
them,
need to talk to
then
you
you
one
have to now deal with the issue
Okay.
now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Honorable
So,
Sased,
I
finally.
think
Finally.
when we come to these shows,
Yes.
it is good we speak
The truth. I like the truth.
Let us not speak from both sides of
Yes.
the mouth. And when it comes to voting in parliament, yes, a political party can declare a party line, but that does not compel individual members from voting in the party line. That has been practiced over the years. All of us have been members of parliament. And when you look at some
why
of
do you
the
have a
members of
caucus?
Azimio,
Why do you
have a
let's
caucus?
be honest.
Then why do you
Let's
have
be
a
honest.
whip and a
Let's be
caucus?
honest.
You said
whip,
honest,
you
yeah.
convince. If you can't convince, and if members of parliament
They choose
feel
it.
otherwise, they have to vote differently. Like, for example, in the finance bill, let's be factual.
No.
We saw members of Azimio, members of parliament of Azimio. They said, no, we must vote the finance bill because I represent people who need housing. And that makes a lot of sense. So
Okay.
really, when it comes to bills, you don't enslave. You can take a position as a party, but members will have
Assuming
the
you
right
are
to
right.
vote.
Assuming you are
That has
right.
been done.
Assuming you are right, Honorable Sased.
That has been
You've
done.
said honesty is
And so
important.
it is not
Honest-
right.
Just one more question.
Yes.
You've explained that. Assuming you are right, how comes the people who voted against Azimio's line are the same people who went to parliament to seek development? They're the same group.
Yeah,
How comes? Who went to State House? How comes it's the same group and not Nyikal, not How comes it's the
Now,
same,
when you
group
look
that
at
is
this
affiliated?
number,
Yes.
when you look at this number,
Yeah.
which they are
You're smiling.
They lost the numbers. Yeah. I'm
smiling.
being factual.
You're
I'm
smiling.
being extremely factual.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
when you
answer
look
that,
at the numbers,
how comes
and
it's the
even
same
look at,
group?
for
It's not the
example,
same group.
It's the same group.
It's not the same group.
All of them. I
It's
can
not the
show
same
you.
group.
It's
We
not.
know it's the same group.
Pasaris
No,
was
it's the
not.
same group.
Pasaris was
Even
not
if
in
you try
State
to
House.
use whatever telescope to try and examine and extract what you want to extract, you're not going to do so. There are 349 members of parliament. And when it comes to voting on bills, they are free to vote according to their conscience,
Let me
even when they are
explain.
whipped. And when they
let me
do
give-
that,
I want to give a
that
practical
should not
example now.
invite
What
any
is happening in
disciplinary
Parliament
action.
now?
Gentlemen,
Like,
you're
for
just,
example, you've given
you just want to
Muchomba.
confuse me here.
Ken, there's no
You just want
confusion.
to
But now,
Ken,
as
look
a
at
house
this.
leader-
Look
These are
at
the
this.
issues.
Can he explain it? Then I come
members,
to you.
Then
These
you
are the
come to
issues.
me.
Yes, then I'll
let me
come.
move.
Yeah.
Let me move this agenda to the next level.
Yeah.
What is it that should be done in this country? We've seen Uhuru Kenyatta, retired president, very active. Of course, you had discussed this matter far much earlier on, working within the background and choreographing all these activities. This is a fact for sure. We are dealing with a bitter team who want to cripple a government that has been legitimately elected from not working. And you have heard from Bui's own word, this government is going home in 2027. That's their thinking. That is their assertion, which is wrong. That means they have not recognized the sovereign decision of the people of Kenya on 9th of August. This is what should happen for statesmanship and for the state to work and for democracy to work in this country. That's why we have a constitution. We had a date with destiny on 9th of August in terms of election. Uhuru Kenyatta, as a retired president, should do what Moi did in 2002. Moi told Uhuru, who was his project, to concede. And he conceded. And he gave a concession statement. That created a unity in the country. And Kibaki was able to settle in office, and the rest is history. When you have an exiting president who is bitter and who has handed over power, and he comes out and declares to the public that my leader is somebody else who is not the elected president, then there is a problem in the country. The road to real dialogue and conversation in this country is one. Uhuru Kenyatta, with a clean heart, and come out openly and clearly and tell Kenyans, I recognize William Ruto as the legitimately elected people of Kenya and as a retired president, and as per traditions and precedents that was set by Moi and Kibaki, who supported a sitting president at all times. That's what should be done. Uhuru should do that. That's what needs to be done. Number two, Raila Odinga should also accept the verdict and the will of the people of Kenya and concede and also recognize William Ruto as the president. From there, once those two things are done, the next, all other issues will fall in place. Engagements, dialogue, and whatever it is. Now, when it comes to these negotiations that are being pushed, the matter is in Parliament. Parliament was created by the Constitution for national dialogue, and it sits every day from Tuesday to Thursday. And even there is an extra parliamentary team that has been established, the bipartisan team. They can take advantage of that. So I think all these hulabaloo being created and the criminal activities that we see, which we call it, this is actually akin to domestic terrorism, destruction of property and killing of people in the name of mandamanos. These are not mandamanos in typical sense. So I think
I need to give them an opportunity.
I don't think that route will take us anywhere.
But I want to ask you a question. Why is this validation from Raila Odinga and retired president so important to the leadership that is?
That is what is expected of any democracy. We've seen civilized democracies that when a president is exiting through such transition, you respect. It behoves that you respect what people decide.
Now, what he said yesterday, how important is it when he said, he is my president. If he calls me to State House, I will come. Is that part of it?
That was the first time he mentioned the word that William Ruto is his president.
And I was there.
And that was a reluctant statement. And you can still see he's bitter. He must address bitterness in himself and come out as a straight leader and a statesman. And also Raila Odinga should also do the same and concede. From there will be peace. We create an enabling environment to deal with all economic, social, and leadership issues.
I actually don't think validation is important or necessary from the two leaders. Not at all. Because the validation comes from the Constitution, and it also comes from the president assuming the instruments of power on that fateful day when he was inaugurated or when he was sworn in. And that was validation enough. The challenge has actually been invalidation, in the sense that non-recognition by these two leaders who say they want to have a discussion or a debate, a dialogue with this gentleman, and very well, they do not, or they claim not to recognize him as a president, particularly Raila Odinga, because again, as I said, Uhuru Kenyatta did recognize William Samoei Ruto as a president at the point of handing over power. And I also want to point out that members of parliament do not represent their parties or their caucuses in parliament. They represent the people who elect them, their constituents. And that is why members of parliament who decided to oppose the Finance Act or the Finance Bill at that point in time did it within their constitutional and democratic confines, and that was it was okay. It is allowed. And I can tell you, and I would want to advise Honorable Nyikal here, that those members who did not support the Finance Act will have no consequences whatsoever. In fact, from our side, in fact, as you can see, the member who did not, one of the members who did not support the finance bill, the president was already in their constituency launching development projects. Are you getting? What does that tell you? It means that that is not going to be a measure of how a member is treated in Kenya Kwanza government.
Okay.
And I would also want to urge the Azimio side to do the same thing. Allow their members also to exercise their democratic right, because their members do represent their constituents.
Okay.
And constituents come with different demands. I remember, for example, like the speech that was given, or the supporting speech that was given by Honorable Passaris. She was very clear. She said, for me, it's a matter of my constituency. Yeah, of course. And she was not among the people who had gone to see the president in the State House. And not only her, there were quite a number of other members who did come up very strongly to say, for me, I support the finance bill because of 1, 2, 3. And I think that needs to be allowed. And so if we are looking at areas where democratic rights are not being enjoyed, is actually in the political parties that are seeking now to discipline members of parliament who voted against the party line. And that is why, Ken, I would tell you here, there is no way any disciplinary measure taken against those members will succeed in whatsoever way.
Okay.
It will not, because
Okay.
there is no legal basis under which that kind of disciplinary action can be taken.
Okay.
But last point, I like how we started. Honorable Nyikal did put very clearly that there must be a difference between politics and governance. And I will tell you what we just need to do: allow Kenya Kwanza to govern as it is doing, and then the opposition can come on board and criticize whatever steps that are not being taken right. For example, the government now has concentrated and has put all its effort and thinking in production. The government has invested so heavily on fertilizer, a fertilizer which is not being circulated to government-friendly areas or zones. It is being circulated to the whole of the republic of this country, and every other member is benefiting from this. Government again has also employed teachers. You can imagine, for the first time since this country got
I've had that debate. I've had that debate on that. You're going to take us away.
No, it's actually now.
You take us away from the topic.
But this government is actually going to employ 55,000 teachers in 1 year. No other government has done that before.
You're taking us away from our discussion.
Really,
yes.
I understand where you're coming
all
from,
over the world,
Yeah.
in all democratic nations and all over the world, the actually most important factor is that they actually have multi-party. It always goes with multi-party democracy. So that in all these democracies, there are parties. Now, why would there be parties? Because it is recognized that even within the democracy, there are interests that are better negotiated as a group or better canvassed as a group. Therefore, provisions are made even in law on how people can get together as parties. Now, it would be absolutely chaotic if, even if of your parties, there are no guiding principles that will say, if you want to be in this party, this is the way you conduct yourself, and so on. Those are there in laws. And if you go even, so those must be there. And when we come to the bills, we were oversimplifying it. If we come to the bill, even in one whole bill, there are areas where the party can say, on this one, people can vote as they wish. But on this particular one, because it is in principle, we will take a stand as a party. That is practice, and they know it. And if that were not so, why would we have the positions of whips? And even now, Kwanza people, now they actually, now the most, let me say, very active in the use of their whips. When people come, and it is actually, in my view, weakening parliament, they vote as a block. So what happens? Sometimes they don't even want us to discuss a matter. A matter is brought, it is actually proposed, seconded, and then you hear a voice say, put the question. It has not even been discussed. And immediately, they put the question, and if there is a threat that that question is not going through, They have a very good whipping going. People come from the cafeteria who are not even aware of what was being discussed, and they vote. What is guiding them to vote is basically because their whip, who is a member of their coalition or their party, has indicated they are going to vote.
You can't blame them. You can't blame them.
I'm not. No. Listen.
If you are outwitted in political organizing,
You are not letting me finish. You are taking the part you like. Now, when I say the part you don't like, don't jump. Let me say, if now other party is saying you cannot be our members, and when we ask you to do this, we are taking action on you. That they think is wrong. But when they are bringing their people to do exactly all they want all the time, they are happy.
Both
So
sides of the mouth.
you can't have it.
Yes.
But those who don't, we don't punish them.
We are running out of time.
So that actually, that is now actually weakening parliament. Somebody actually once said that, Nikal, now you're very radical. I became radical on one day. I don't think I'm going back until that parliament changes. We don't have parliament today.
And you're a ranking member.
Let me tell you what. Let me finish.
Yeah.
We were vetting the deputy governor of the central bank. Mujungu, it wasn't discussed. It was proposed, seconded, despite people, me and Bob, having we wanted to. In fact, I wanted to support that. They said, put the question, and people voted. How can that happen? And you still call that parliament? And that is what brought us to when we came to this issue of bipartisan. When people talk bipartisan, there is a sleight of hand. And what is the sleight of hand? They want bipartisan, and they said there is provision in parliament. Now, why are you bringing this provision in parliament? Because you know you are effectively have numbers, so whatever you want, good or bad, will pass. Now listen, then why were we saying, no.
Yes.
Why were we saying, then what the route is there? We are saying, okay, outside, people can agree and talk, and if there are discussions or negotiations, whoever say that one we have negotiated with. Now, when you go to parliament, you also mobilize your people to support the same position. We mobilize our people to support the same position. Because the bipartisan arrangement in parliament cannot work because of the imbalance.
The numbers.
Let's come to government.
Is it now
2 minutes.
Is it now a stark admission
Yes.
that they want to delegitimize parliament? And
No.
do what was supposed to be done in parliament, outside parliament. I don't think
What
that's
does
the route
delegitimize
is that
parliament?
now the country, yes,
What does
that's what it
delegitimize
means.
parliament?
If they are looking for,
and I want to tell him,
if
Mr.
Ken,
Lawyer,
if Ken,
finish.
No.
if Ken,
And I want to tell him as a lawyer
if Ken,
that this is something we have to look at. It never occurred to me that actually supermajority can be actually dangerous to democracy.
As a lawyer and
as
as
a
a
lawyer,
former
and as a
speaker,
ranking member,
as a lawyer and as a former speaker, I would want to advise him that when
Can we give Socio
Yes,
and who is quiet?
Just one
Yes.
point.
Yeah.
As a
Very
lawyer,
short,
as a lawyer and as a former speaker, I would want to advise my honorable member here, who is actually my senior, that when in parliament we operate under the standing orders, and you know very clearly, should you ever hear people shouting that put the question. If the speaker agrees to putting the question, the standing orders dictate allow that if you're not comfortable and if you don't agree with that position, you stand and then you call for 15, for just a few other members from your side who do not agree with that position and call for division.
Yes.
Once you call for division, the speaker will be obliged.
This is not a show. It's a show
The
full of
speaker
us.
will be obliged to listen to you and to, in fact, stop that process and listen
To what he's saying.
to all your points.
And then what happens?
Ken, and you
We need to
stop me.
move on.
They're
Yes.
not
Now,
finishing.
allow me.
What
Ken,
are going to
Ken.
do?
I know.
Bring the numbers.
Ken,
To defeat it again.
Again.
Yeah. And
Yes.
it's not a crime to have numbers in parliament.
now,
Yes.
Dr. Nikal
We are running-
said
so, yeah,
he's a
try and make
ranking-
it short.
He's
Yes.
a ranking member, and he will not keep quiet. But I can tell you, he kept quiet when the handshake regime crippled parliament. That is one. Two,
Give
Yes, yes,
examples
yes,
like
you
I'm
did.
giving.
Yeah.
Give
Two.
examples.
Two, when you
May I
talk
give
about
examples?
the voting by members of parliament in parliament, the constitution is very clear. The people of Kenya shall exercise their sovereign power directly or indirectly through elected people. It doesn't say through political parties, through their elected leaders. The moment you are elected in an entity, you are answerable to those people.
Okay.
And you speak for those people, notwithstanding the political parties. And then that gives a space of democracy in parliament. If a member of parliament devises a party position, that does not invite any humiliation. And that's why Wamuchomba is a member of UDA. She's okay. She stood her position. She has not been disciplined. That was a democratic right at that time. But when you see Jubilee, almost all the members of Jubilee, 28 of them or so, they've taken a completely different position, which consolidates the party position. Can that be called defiance of the coalition, a supra political party above the political parties that was created?
I'd have
and I
so
think
many
this
questions,
is,
but we are running out of time
yes,
based on what
and
you're
then
saying.
finally, I think what we need, let us respect the constitutional democracy that we have adopted as a country. Once a political party and a president is elected, give that party space to implement its manifesto. Okay. And we are 1 year into the 5-year term of President William Ruto, and the focus on the finance bill is to cripple the Kenya Kwanza manifesto. And I don't think that will be the route to take. The issues that have been outlined by Kenya Kwanza to inject resources to the production sector of the economy, that has been killed over the years, and we are beginning to see results even in the agricultural sector. MSME, the digital revolution is a key thing to transform the economy, the housing and UHC. Those are things that we need now, and the opposition now, they need
I want to take that UHC.
They need,
they are fallacies.
no. They now need to sit from the opposition benches and check the government in implementing what they promised the people of Kenya. But you cannot go to the street to cripple the economy and cripple the government. That one will not work. And that is why and the president has said he's willing to meet Raila Odinga. As a president, the president can invite any Kenyan or any meeting. Okay. That is right. But I think we need to move out of these lies that we are seeing.
Listening to Sosion and my friend from Ukurueni talk about democracy and the president and parliament, you all know that parliament has been neutered by the executive, because parliament doesn't make any decisions anymore. They are made in State House. But I just wanted to finish by saying, parliament. Yes, I am part of parliament. I am very ashamed, by the way, that we draw a salary and we cannot listen to our people. They talk about listening to the people. 93% of Kenyans said they do not want the finance bill, and it was passed. So who are you representing? Anyway, the thing is, I just want to say that, the president, 2 things he did is that he was given the sword, the sword of power. He shouldn't use it against Kenyans because he's killed too many Kenyans so far. Number 2, he was given the constitution. I will just give you 3 or 4 articles that you need to go and read and understand why we are unhappy. Because he's broken Article 37, the right to demonstrate. He's broken Article 51, the right of arrested persons. Now they're being abducted, held without communication with their people. Read Article 25, rights which cannot be limited. One of them is A, freedom from torture, degradation, inhuman treatment, and C, the right to a fair trial. People are arrested and they are supposed to be presented within 24 hours. They are not presented. And those are members of Azimio. And of course, Article 19 says fundamental rights belong to individuals and are not granted by the state. You go and read those ones before we meet next time.
Dr. Nikal, you wanted to say something? Just briefly, because I'll give you the final remarks. I want to play the video of the week, then we can take. You wanted to say something?
Now, what I wanted to say is demonstrating peacefully against the Constitution.
Okay, now that you've gone to demonstration, let's play the video of the week, then we can come back
Absolutely.
and end with this.
Is it against the Constitution? It isn't. In this demonstration, I can tell you, where where police did not appear, demonstrations were peaceful.
Like in
and it's subdued. Why do you have 6 people beating me? If you are shooting to protect yourself because maybe the crowd has overwhelmed you, why do you shoot as a 25, a 20-something-year-old boy, 13-year-old boy? Why you take a schoolboy, another schoolboy, and shoot 9 times at the back?
Was there police in
Mulolongo? Then this will be.
Was there police in a mortuary in Kisumu?
Yes.
Where it was vandalized?
Yes.
They don't speak from 2 sides of the mouth.
Let me play the video.
Show you.
Let me play the video of the week, Daktari. When we come back, we'll have closing remarks based on what's happening. The Standard is running a headline on fears over Ruto Raila deal in making, and obviously there's also some heading there. Did they have to die? Families honor protest victims. But first, let's play the video of the week. Then we'll have the final comments from you, gentlemen.
We have made a message to the United Nations and the people of all the world. Sit down. Sit down.
I'm being asked by Honorable Kagusha why it was necessary to play that video. It's because we are under new constitutional dispensation where more rights have been guaranteed in the constitution. So the reason why that was important is because if you look at where we are right now and the videos we saw the last 1 week in some parts of the country, there's no difference with what's happening. But the difference is this: we're in a new constitution that is more than 13 years old, that should not be happening. So that's why it's important. So as I give you your closing remarks, because you asked me a question.
You are going to play the video of the young boy, identical
to the same thing that happened. There's so many videos, we couldn't pick all of them online, but we brought that as history pre the current constitution, where more rights are guaranteed, and the other one where there were very few rights that were guaranteed, but it still happened. I mean, it's the same thing. If we remove the timestamp and we removed the face, then someone will think that is something that happened in the last few weeks. So I'll give you, I'll start with your closing remarks.
Ken Mijunga, it's clear that there is a narrative, a wider narrative that is trying to be pushed and forced on Kenyans. And it started pre-election. And that is why that video was necessary, because it pushes the narrative that some people would want to push to Kenyans. And we know very well that the government that we have today is extremely restrained. And I would want to advise my honorable member Mbui. He has given us a number of articles to go and look at, but I would also want to ask him to go and look at Article 24D, which states that the need to ensure, and this is on limitations of rights and fundamental freedoms. And it says that the need to ensure that the enjoyment of rights and fundamental freedoms by any individual does not prejudice the rights and fundamental freedoms of others. My brother, what we saw here in Mulolongo, people going to interfere with the freedoms and the rights of others by violently destroying public property. What we have seen by your demonstrators and rioters who have invaded other people's supermarkets, their shops, and what we have seen, the demonstrators violently destroying public utilities, including police stations and police vehicles, that can only be termed as domestic terrorism. And the police come in only when that kind of domestic terrorism is exercised. And that cannot be part of the rights that are being defended or are being advocated for by ODM and by Azimio. And I want to say the government will respect any right of protests, any right of demonstrations. I'm sure, like, for example, those who went for vigil today, I'm sure they have not seen any policemen harassing them in any way. And if you peacefully gathered and did your protests in a peaceful manner, nobody will touch you. But what you are seeing today is domestic terrorism being perpetuated by people. And by the way, we are also aware, and evidence is credible, to point out that the demonstrations that we are seeing now violently being organized The same organizers have two groups. They have a group of legit demonstrators, then they also have a group of goons whom they are hiring and giving those bundukis that you are now seeing them being sought and using them to kill their own people. And shame, today you see them with crocodile tears, shedding crocodile tears on Kenyans. They have organized themselves to kill so that they can have sympathy and they can have an appeal to the international community that people are being killed by police in Kenya. We know they're even hiring some of the rogue policemen to do some of those actions that we are seeing.
I'm glad the government is on the watch.
Let me ask. This is somebody talking on behalf of the government and says he knows or they know that somebody is hiring rogue policemen. Those policemen should be in the cell today. Not a single one of them in the cell. And then, Tom, I want to tell you, the first, when we have the first Kamkunji, we moved from Kamkunji through Pumwani, through Isli, up to Madari, and there were a lot of people. Nothing happened until the policemen appeared. Now, there may be need also for people to understand crowd psychology. Once the police come and attack once, then mayhem now comes. Now you want to now attribute that mayhem to these people, but it's actually the police. During these last 3 demonstrations in my constituency, I told the OCPD, and I give her credit for that, come when these people throw stones. That's your right. If they top somebody's car, that's your right. Come. See, if they touch anything, I'll be with them. And I said, keep them far. Don't bring them in the road and start taunting each other. And we did it 10 kilometers. And we were a huge group. I could show you the video. Nothing happens. And I think it happened in Masabit also. I think it happens in other places. So in Katiani also. So what they normally do, whether they understand it, I'm not so sure whether after the new constitution, the curriculum at Kiganju changed, because that may be necessary. That there's a way you conduct yourself when you are dealing with a large group, that if you provoke them once, what happens there is the original provocation. Okay. And that's what happens. The videos we have, another thing, when the government today through PS Omolo today was giving what has happened, he talked about the number of vehicles that have been spoiled. He talks about, I think, 1 policeman was killed. He didn't mention the number of Kenyans killed. Now, even if they were killed by goons hired by somebody, when you are in charge of internal security, you must put all these figures together. Okay. What does that tell you? There is some cover-up already started. The videos showed policemen, some of them are now even known, actually shooting people.
Okay. Honorable Sassion, your final remarks.
My final remarks. I think the argument about Article 37, that it gives freedom, is being taken out of context and being misused. The moment Article 37 is very clear about the word peaceably. Peaceably, you don't carry any arms, and accompanying legislation that guide the same. So I don't think it's right to argue when such activities get into the level of lawlessness, as we have seen, and it degenerates into violence, like the destruction of the Mlolongo standard gauge railway, running into millions of shillings. There were no police officers, and carrying of stones, blocking of roads using stones. We have seen boulders and rocks being used. I don't think these are the demonstrations that we really talk about. That means the threshold. And our side, the other side, should reckon and accept that fact, and accept to bear the greatest responsibility for the consequences of the activity they organize themselves. And you organize an activity that you cannot control and manage. That's a fact for sure. You don't expect the police officers who are trained to enforce law and order to come and sing hymnals to you. They will come and do what they were trained to do. And therefore, you bear the consequences. It is time you get out of the streets and go back to parliament and hold government to account in parliament, where you are elected and you are given mandate. And if you lost elections, accept you lost elections, and accept to play your role as opposition and hold the government to account and allow the government that has been elected to operate within the constitution in the 5 years and implement what they promised Kenyans. I think that is what we need to do in this country. Okay. Then wait for 2027, another election date in 2027. We go back to Kenyans, and Kenyans will decide how the country should be run at the ballot. And let us not undermine the sovereign and supreme decision of the people of Kenya. Once they decide at the ballot, it is time we begin respecting Kenyans. Okay. And the beginning of respecting the decision of Kenyans is the beginning of good order that benefits everybody, including those who are in government and those who are out of government.
Thank you, Honorable Sasson. Well said.
Thank you. Ken, you know, you showed a clip of some barbaric action by the police ages ago in the dark days. And quickly, the members of Kenya Kwanza have said it's a narrative being driven by the media. And I'm wondering, don't you have respect for human life? Over 30 Kenyans have died. And you're talking about a narrative? What narrative have the media? The media have also been victims of this victimization. But let's talk about Article 37. You know, Ken, we have to agree that we must stop double standards. Because they say Article 37, if you are armed and all, it is illegal, you cannot demonstrate. Tell me one leader of Azimio that was ever seen in public holding any firearm. I will show you two of Kenya Kwanza. You saw a member of Nakuru town walking in Nakuru town holding a firearm with the police around him, and he was leading a demonstration. It is the first thing he said, that, oh, you shouldn't be armed. He was armed. I have been to demonstrations. We had a peaceful demonstration in Kadiani. Immediately after that, the leaders of the police in my region were called and asked, why did you allow it? So in essence, the fact is that they don't want us to hold demonstrations, but they will hold demonstrations, led by none other than the Secretary General of Kenya Kwanza. This young man was Cleophas Malala in Kakamega. It's okay for them to do it. It's not okay for us to do it. And if you're met as Azimio, 2-3 people, you will be beaten, you will be shot, they will throw tear gas at you. And finally, he talked about guns from Kenya, Azimio side that are being used. You know, Ken, let's stop taking Kenyans for fools. You know, every firearm that is licensed in this country, a ballistic test has been done on it, and the police can tell which gun the bullet came from. You have never heard of a situation where the police have investigated and have said that this bullet came from Officer so-and-so's firearm. But every firearm in Kenya that is held by the police, that is held in private hands and is licensed, they would know. So this is just a story they're telling us. We know that the people that were killing our people are actually police and militia that were working hand in hand with the police. The video show it. How is it that we have firearms and we have not been arrested with the firearms? So I think this narrative that is going on is to try and blacklist us, but the reality is that Kenyans are hurting. Stop hurting Kenyans. Stop killing Kenyans.
There are people in court.
Gentlemen, this conversation cannot be over. I wish I had more time. I wish my director would give me more time, but I want to thank you so much for coming. As I always say in this show, the more we continue talking, the more we get to the good place. The day we stop talking is the day we start to fight again. But I want to thank you so much, Robert Mbui, member for Kathiani, and Deputy Minority Leader at the National Assembly. Thank you so much for coming tonight. I know ulitulenga jana, lakini leo umekuja. Thank you so much for coming. My Jirani, Honorable Susian, thank you so much for coming and sharing your perspective. And of course, looking forward to another discussion. Dr. James Nikal, thank you so much for coming. And of course, Kagwisha, asante sana for coming. Member for Mukurweni Nyeri. Yeah. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming. And thank you for Kabando, former. All right, thank you so much for watching News Hour tonight. We do this next week, same place, same time. And by the way, we have a great guest for next week on Wednesday. Keep it here. And of course, the conversation continues off air, but online it continues. Have a good night. God bless on behalf of the whole team.